ladies and gentlemen. I'm doing The Secret of Oz Part 2 in a way. I'm re-announcing it because what's gone on since then, when I first put this video out with excerpts, has become a lot more worse. We are close to the bailout in America, like Greece, Spain, and now maybe Italy.
What's going on with the American economy? Foreclosures are everywhere, unemployment is skyrocketing, and it looks like this may only be the beginning. As a result, most Americans fear that our cherished basic freedoms and way of life are under direct attack as our standard of living sinks like a stone. But could it be that all these problems were foreseen 100 years ago by L. Frank Baum, the author of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz? Why is this just coming out? Because when the MGM movie The Wizard of Oz was made in 1939, significant changes were made from L. Frank Baum's original book version written 40 years earlier in 1899.
In the book version of The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy's slippers are made of silver, as opposed to in the film version where Dorothy's slippers are made of ruby. You take away the silver slippers on the gold or yellow brick road, and all of the other symbolism tends to be lost.
Now let's see what the experts say about our current problem, then look at our history so we can understand what L. Frank Baum was trying to say in his book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz.
Well, it's no secret to any American that we're living in very precarious times. Americans are being robbed blind, and they don't even know who's doing the robbing.
I mean, we clearly are, in a bus, and we're heading for the edge of a cliff. And there still is probably time to change course. The only problem is the people driving the bus don't realize that there's a cliff there yet.
If the problem that's grinding the economy to a halt is too much debt, and if nobody in the government, in either party, is looking at solving the debt problem, then the answer is it's going to go into a depression as far as the eye can see.
And so we're going to have a massive recession, or let's call it a depression, while the economy rebalances away from a service sector economy towards a good producing economy, away from a borrow and spend economy to a save and produce economy. That's what we need to do. We can't get from where we are to where we need to be without a severe depression.
What can government do? The sad answer is, under our current monetary system, nothing. It's not going to get any better until the root cause of the problem is understood and addressed. There isn't enough stimulus money in the entire world to get us out of this hole. Why? Debt. The national debt is just like our consumer debt. It's the interest that's killing us.
You must understand that every penny, every dollar we have in circulation is created as an interest-bearing debt.
So what is the national debt? When government spends more than it collects in taxes, it has to borrow the difference by selling interest-bearing IOUs, such as U.S. bonds. When a U.S. bank buys a $100 U.S. bond, it gets to loan out 10 times that amount. So the bank not only gets back the $100 plus interest from the federal government, it gets to loan out another $1,000 it doesn't have and charge additional interest. Banks are allowed to create this extra money out of thin air. That's why bank buildings are the biggest in every town on the planet.
Don't you know?
This system of lending way more than you have is called fractional reserve lending. Almost all our money is created by banks, lending it to people, to companies, or to government. As we'll see, there is a better way for a government to get money. Simply issue it without debt for the benefit of all citizens equally. Abraham Lincoln did it, Ben Franklin did it, Jefferson wanted to do it. Honest Americans have fought against this bank-controlled debt money system throughout American history. But unless we change it soon, most of our freedoms will soon be lost in a tidal wave of debt. 75 years ago, an employee of the Atlanta Federal Reserve explained the importance of the debt money system and how it can strangle our economy. Someone has to borrow every dollar we have in circulation. If the banks create ample money, we are prosperous. If not, we starve. When one gets a complete grasp of the picture, the tragic absurdity of our hopeless position is incredible. It is the most important subject intelligent persons can investigate and reflect upon.
Our government should never go into debt. It doesn't need to go into debt. A government can issue the money it needs.
That's absolutely right. Under our current money system, the government has to borrow our money into existence, then pay interest on it. That's why they call it the national debt. All our money is created out of debt. Politicians who focus on reducing the national debt without trying to actually fix the underlying cause probably don't understand what the national debt really is. To reduce the national debt would be to reduce our money, and there's already not enough money for the average person.
Why haven't we heard this before? Because most of the media and Congress are beholden to the big banks for loans. Yes, Congress still appropriates money, but where do they get it? Again, what they can't raise from taxes, they borrow from banks. In 2009, Congress will spend over $4 trillion, but they will have to borrow half of it. But on top of that, in 2008-2009, Congress bailed out the biggest banks by giving them nearly $1 trillion.
The worst part is, we aren't just giving the money away, we're borrowing it to give it away.
If we don't,
That's absolutely right. Under our current money system, the government has to borrow our money into existence, then pay interest on it. That's why they call it the national debt. All our money is created out of debt. Politicians who focus on reducing the national debt without trying to actually fix the underlying cause probably don't understand what the national debt really is. To reduce the national debt would be to reduce our money, and there's already not enough money for the average person.
Why haven't we heard this before? Because most of the media and Congress are beholden to the big banks for loans. Yes, Congress still appropriates money, but where do they get it? Again,
From
what
the
they can't raise from
banksters.
taxes, they borrow from banks. In 2009, Congress will spend over $4 trillion, but they will have to borrow half of it.
Half of
But
it.
on top of that, in 2008-2009, Congress bailed out the biggest banks by giving them nearly $1 trillion.
$1 trillion.
The worst part is, we aren't just giving the money away, we're borrowing it to give it away.
If we don't do something about the fact that we are now in a situation where the additional debt we're taking on is actually depressing GDP, we're going to have a major problem here in the very near future. You can't keep doing that forever. Sooner or later, the people that loan us that money are going to say, no, we're not going to loan you anymore.
One of the things I think that's difficult to figure out from the political side of this thing, it's clear that they're making a lot of mistakes. And the question in my mind is, are these mistakes? Could people in Washington, the highest officials of the land, really be ignorant about what they're doing? Because I can't look at what the politicians are doing in Washington. I can't look at that and say there's any hope of that working. And these guys have to face election. Now, when the next election rolls around, they're not going to be politically popular figures. There are going to be consequences for the politicians. So what makes them push the wrong buttons?
The other day I heard a senator on TV say the trouble with General Motors, they have too much debt. And so the solution is to give them another big loan. Well, you can't borrow yourself out of debt. General Motors can't, you and I can't, the federal government can't. Nobody can borrow themselves out of debt.
But yet, we have, with Obama, he bought GM. You think you're getting any shares from GM? Hell no. You're not getting a damn penny from GM. And you should. We should be on the stock market. We should be the stockholders of GM. And now he's sending it to China. Update.
No more than, like I said before, you cannot drink yourself sober. And that's what we're all trying to do. So it don't make any difference what kind of stimulus. And Obama, he had the right idea. We're going to build lots of new roads, but he's going to borrow the money. Well, how we can't even pay the debt now. I mean, we can't even pay the interest on it. No, but
And we're not even building the new roads here. Oh no. You think we're building the new roads? Oh no. China's coming over to do it. And most of them are industrial, well, they're actually military coming over here to build our roads. You think they're going to build them for them? Maybe. You think they're going to build them for us? Not quite. I've heard rumors that they may even put explosives or weakening into the system of the bridges so they fall for us. But that's far stretched thinking and conspiracy theory to me. I believe that they're bringing the military over to do everything that they want over here to build our bridges, giving it to China. Yes, this is what's happening. Do you not see it yet? Today is what? June 18th, 2012.
Nobody's even talking about the debt problem as such. They're talking about the fact that, gee, the bankers aren't making enough money to live in the way that they're accustomed to.
Until politicians begin to understand where the root of the problem lies, we're never going to fix this. But the good news is that the solution isn't new or radical. America used to do it long before L. Frank Baum wrote about it.
But do they really want to do it? We have a president in there who's a socialist. He wants to see America fall in his own way. He wants to either make it fall while he's in there or wait until the next president gets in there and makes it fall, therefore guaranteeing these socialists back in 4 years from the Republicans. Even though the Republicans are under the same Goldman Sachs and the rest of the banksters out there that are doing this, you notice what they did to Ron Paul. They demonized him to the point now that nobody's starting to think about him anymore because of Rand. And Rand's just a Republican politician, GOP dog who will go and do it. You know, he never went to his father, and his father never said that he came to him. Therefore, we're being hoodwinked here, people. We're being hoodwinked by Greece. Do you want Greece to come here? Your next 3 generations of children being indebted to these banksters? Corporate banksters? I mean, they're corporates too. The banksters bought the corporations. They bought all this stuff. They have it all. And you think they're going to let you get away? You're a slave. Remember the Adidas shoes? The new Adidas shoes have shackles on them. That's to get you used to it. You get used to it. The shackles will be electrified in the future. They're only plastic now. Anyway, let's continue with this.
Throughout American history, politicians have fought with big bankers over it. But this aspect of our history has now been erased from history books.
I think we need to reconsider
everything that we knew about the banksters has been erased.
The very foundations of our economic and monetary system.
The government, a government agency of some kind, should take charge of the money supply.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it is now in Great
No,
Britain.
no.
Not in any country. It's almost all over the world.
Banksters.
The bulk of the money supply is now created by commercial banks.
Commercial banks.
We're starting, for people that were just at the start of the constitution of a society, and someone suggested, the best way of creating the money and putting it in is to combine it with the function of providing a competitive profit-making market for borrowing and lending. It would be regarded as idiotic.
You want a new cause to embrace? You want to do something good for humanity?
Yeah.
How about one simple reform that will fix most of the bad things in this world, like
Exactly.
hunger, poverty, disease, and misery? This is the ultimate civil rights struggle, humankind's escape from serfdom.
As President Obama put it,
due to the ongoing recession, the number of chronically hungry people will climb to over 1 billion worldwide.
1 billion.
But this is completely unnecessary.
Totally.
Yes, we could eliminate world hunger in a few years. But how?
The solution is the secret that's been hidden from us for over 100 years, ever since the time when author L. Frank Baum wrote the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
But before we show you what these symbols were, we've got to understand some history. Otherwise, the Wizard of Oz connection just won't make sense to you. So let's take a journey down the yellow brick road through monetary
Gold
history.
bricks. Those
Our
are gold
first stop
bricks,
will be Rome.
not yellow.
The problem with money is that, like many other things in life, people fight over who gets to be in control of it.
In fact, the only time Jesus became violent was when he chased the money changers from the temple. He
The
made a whip
Zionist
out of
Jews.
cords, and he scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables.
That's
What
right.
was that all about?
That
The
was
money
about the
changers were the
banksters.
bankers of that day. They had created a special silver coin called the half shekel of the sanctuary.
That's
Even the
right.
poor had to have some of these coins to pay their temple tax, so the money changers could charge whatever the market would bear. This monopoly on money was nothing less than stealing from the poorest Jews on their holiest ground.
The real Jews.
This outraged Jesus, just as it would outrage the senators of the Roman Republic a few years later.
Although we will never know for sure, fighting over control of money may have been the cause of one of the most famous assassinations in history.
What made Rome great? There were many factors, but certainly the most overlooked was the money system of the Roman Republic. About 300 BC, the Roman Republic supplied the people with a plentiful form of cheap money, money made from copper and bronze. Then they spent this cheap money into the economy.
And they
It was a
built all these
revolutionary
great buildings.
idea.
We did the same in
Today,
America.
opponents of this money system call it fiat money, money not backed by precious metals. But what the Roman Republicans had discovered was that it doesn't matter what backs the money. All that matters is who controls its quantity.
That's it.
Did it work back then? It was amazingly effective. Unlike today, it was a money system created without debt to the government.
That's right. Debtless money
This
from
was the first great
banksters.
experiment in wresting the money power from the goldsmiths. This cheap form of money circulated for the benefit of all citizens equally, not just the usual gold coins, which always benefit the rich. With this new, plentiful supply of money, real wealth flowed to the common man.
Without the use of either gold or silver, Rome became mistress of commerce of the world. Her people were the bravest, the most prosperous, the most happy, for they knew no grinding poverty. Her money was issued directly to the people, and was composed of a cheap material, copper and brass, based alone upon the faith and credit of the nation.
That's it.
With this abundant money supply, she built her magnificent courts and temples. She distributed her lands among the people in small holdings, and wealth poured into the coffers of Rome.
But
See?
then, suddenly Julius Caesar changed the Roman
You
money
know, the
supply
first
drastically.
Napoleon,
He started minting
Hitler.
gold coins with his image on them. Then he declared himself emperor for life, putting an end to Rome's great experiment in elected government. The
Dictator.
Republicans in the Senate hated gold money and the plutocracy, ruled by the rich, that it implied. Although the senators assassinated Julius Caesar, gold money now had taken root, empowered by the very rich and the dictators they were able to buy with their gold.
See?
After Caesar's assassination, copper and brass were demonetized, taken out of circulation.
Like nickels,
The quantity
dimes,
of money
quarters.
was reduced by 90%. A deep depression set in. The average person had to sell his property just to buy basic necessities. The wealth of the nation was quickly concentrated into the hands of the richest Romans once again.
Gone was the incentive to work hard and build a great nation for the common good. By 401 AD, Rome was sacked by the Visigoths, and humanity was plunged into the gloom of the Dark Ages.
And that's how Rome fell.
So, in Rome, we learned that with cheap government-issued money, the Roman Republic flourished, but under gold money, it perished. This
Golden
controversy
Brick
between
Road.
cheap money and gold money continues throughout history and, as we'll see, is symbolized in part by the yellow brick road.
And the silver was
Flash
what
forward
saved
7th
it
century
in its
to
own
1100
way at
AD
the
in
time
England.
of our
There were no
country.
banks like we think of them today. What served as banks were the goldsmiths, those who made their gold into gold coins. Although most people didn't understand it, these goldsmiths controlled the economy of the nation and thereby even the politics, even in a monarchy. By acting in concert, goldsmiths could either make money scarce or plentiful.
When they made their gold money plentiful, the economy of the nation flourished. When they made their gold coins scarce, a depression set in, and they could buy up assets for pennies on the dollar.
That's how it works.
About 1100 AD, King Henry I,
The son of England's first Norman king, William the Conqueror, was low on gold money. A series of costly wars had depleted the royal treasury.
So just as colonial Pennsylvania would do hundreds of years later, Henry created a unique form of government-issued money called tally sticks. Tally sticks did not represent any quantity of gold or any other commodity. They were simply polished sticks of wood, issued by the king, which he declared to be good for the payment of taxes. That made tally sticks just as good as any other form of money.
And that's how it works. It's not what you use, it's who controls it. And if it's controlled and balanced in a certain way, you don't have the problem of inflation and deflation. It's all controlled. It's a balancing system that the banksters don't want. They're gaining all this money that you're seeing right now and buying real assets. The assets are property, buildings, lands, properties, as I said before. Anything else they can come across, they're buying it. Cars, whatever. I mean, you just go through the thing. They're buying all this. And they are screwing you out of your prosperity and putting it in their pockets. I keep saying that. They're taking money from your pockets, put it in their pockets, and they are the rich ones. They are suddenly the lords over you. Do you not understand what a feudalist system is? Feudalism is coming back. They're bringing it back. It's been a few hundred years, but if you do your research on feudalism, just WikiLeak it, Wiki encyclopedia, and look up feudalism, you'll know what's exactly coming back to this country right now. And all other countries across the world. They want to still run around in their crowns and their robes and prance around and have you grovel at their feet. Do you not understand what they're actually up to? We'll have to go back to this now.
All right, here we are in the Bank of England Museum with curator John Keyworth, and I'm holding in my hand one of the oldest forms of British money. This is called a tally stick. This is actually a very rare example of a tally stick because it has the two halves of the tally stick.
The idea with the tally stick was that you cut notches in a piece of wood, usually it was hazel,
And these notches were of a prescribed size dimension. If you look at this one, you can see it's got 1,000-pound notches. So
there's 6 notches times 1,000 pounds each. Is that the way it is?
That's exactly
So
it.
that's a 6,000-pound tally stick. This side is called the
stock. This was kept by the person who made the loan, or paid the money in.
I see.
And this is the foil.
And so the foil would be spent into existence, and the idea was this splitting the stick down the middle was to prevent counterfeiting, because of course a stick splits uniquely down the middle.
Because when the debt was repaid, the two pieces were put together, and if they didn't tally, something was awry.
The longer half of a tally stick was called the stock, the root word for stocks and bonds or stockholders.
See
For
where that
centuries,
word
the
comes
supporters
from.
of gold-backed money have belittled tally sticks as an unimportant form of fiat money, one not backed by gold or silver. Some authors even claim that tallies weren't a real money system because they were only used for very large transactions, but that's just not the case. And was this the common size of tally sticks?
In the Middle Ages, the average size was reckoned to be the length from the tip of his thumb to the tip of his forefinger, quite short. Because if you think of it in terms of this is 6,000 pounds. That means it's a huge, huge sum of money.
So the wider the spacing, the larger the
amount. But it was a prescribed distance. It was an inch, and I think half an inch for hundreds and a quarter of an inch for tens. And then it became little lines drawn across with a saw.
So it is clear that tally sticks were used for smaller denominations too, and worked well as an effective debt-free money system for 726 years. Without the crushing weight of debt-based money, England flourished into the greatest power on earth for many centuries.
At their peak, it has been estimated that 95% of English money was in the form of tally sticks.
Compare that to today, where the only debt-free government-issued money is in the form of coin, about 3% of the money supply in the UK and far less in the US.
And that brings up a point with Mike Kaiser, or Max Kaiser, Maximin Kaiser. Him and his buddies were on a YouTube video I watched where they got together and they talked about how they could save Greece. And the reason they could save Greece is if you had a silver coin, the drachma coin weighed against the paper. And that would make it the perfect coin for anyone to invest in, because the drachma in Greece was a certain weight, a certain size, a certain coin. And if they took this coin, and if the money junkies and banksters created more paper, it would bring up the price of that coin. Because what he was suggesting, that it should be a floating currency. And now, to me, this makes a lot of sense. A floating currency. Think about it. A currency of a coin made of silver, something that can be used in electronics and everything, is balanced on the flow of paper created out of nothing that would make that coin go up. And he said, well, what it would be was it would be the best thing for Greece, because the conservatives would buy the coin and the rest of the people who are in with the money junkies would take the paper. But yet when the paper increased, the value of the coin increased, because it was a floating silver coin that floated with the value of the paper produced. And in a way, this is kind of a new way of thinking about how to finance everything. I wish we had this in America with the silver eagle. There's a golden eagle too, but the silver eagle. And you'd buy silver eagles for whatever the price of the paper is right now, which is, what, about $40 for an ounce? You know, $40 an ounce. And you kept that coin. But yet you could go and take that coin, being a floating currency, which it is already in its own way, and be able to buy as much as maybe 50 pieces of paper more. To me, Mike Kaiser and company have the solution, and we should all be investing in a silver coin just to keep the money junkies under control, because that's what they are. They're money junkies. I repeat this after Mike Rivero spoke of it. A money junkie is a person who is into money, like heroin for a drug addict, and they will, under all circumstances, get as much as that paper excuse me, that they can, and do it. But if you have one silver coin and it goes up, well, you got that much more paper to use against them. And in a way, the floating silver piece works against them, because the more paper they produce, that one coin you bought maybe 5 years ago is worth 30 pieces of paper more than what you paid for it at the time. Well, therefore, you're keeping them under control. I agree with Max Kaiser on this. He is a genius as far as the silver market now is concerned, as far as I'm concerned. Him and his cohorts that was on this video. And there was a guy from Mexico and a guy from, I think, Italy. And they were talking about having a floating silver currency. Now, why we can't have that here in America, I don't know. I would buy up silver or want to be paid in silver from my job when I go to the bank or whatever. I want that silver coin in case they start printing money beyond their means. And then I'll have that silver coin to go, well, I have the same value of whatever you're printing up, and buy the same as I could have bought 5 years ago. You just gotta do the math on this. It's a mathematical thinking of what that would be worth if they're working on that system of fiat money. Where right now, a silver dollar, a silver eagle, is worth about 36. I haven't checked it today. It's in the 30s. It may be up there 40s. And a gold coin the same way. And use them both the same exact way. Float the damn money. Float the coin over the paper. And make the banks realize they're overproducing paper to back up this coin. And I don't know. I like that ideal. I like the ideal that if they started this today, every bit of my paper would be invested in the coin, because I know these banksters are going to want more money than. You just got to understand the entire paper system that they got going right now. It's a fiat money. It's not real in itself. But a floating coin of silver. I mean, a lot of people won't go for that, right? They'll go for the paper. But yet the people that are going for the silver coin will keep it in balance. Will keep the paper in balance like it's supposed to be. When they print up this paper, you just can't print up as much as you want and do what you want with it. It devalues it. It takes the value away from the money. And I'm like, oh. And when I watched The Secret of Oz, this entire idea of what Max came up with is perfectly legit to fix the problem with the money changers, the money junkies. They are. They're. I'm telling you, they're on drugs. These people are on a drug called money. And there was who was it today? I just watched. Oh, Still, who did the Secret of Oz. Or it wasn't Still. No, actually, it was Mike Rivero. It said this. He said he would start a drug treatment institutes in California that treated the money junkies and have them go for the money. Every time they see a stack of money, of $100 bills, go over there and grab at it. It would shock the hell out of them. And after a while, after 6 months, he would send them back out into Wall Street, the money junkies of Wall Street, and send them back out and see if they don't improve. I agree with that. It sounds ridiculous, but yet, you need to do something to fix these people. They're actually sick. They're sick in the head. They're hooked on money. Wall Streeters are hooked on money, and a lot of people do not realize that there are drug addicts out there that aren't on plant drugs per se with quotes, but on paper drugs per se, money junkies. And they are the ones that are causing the problem across the planet right now. And they need to be arrested, sent into drug rehab for money junkying. And they need to be fixed from that, because they're trying to make money off of you to take the money from, like I said earlier, from your pocket, put it in theirs, and make you poor. And if you don't believe it, then you haven't been watching what's been going on for the last 10 years. Makes me mad. Let me go on with this.
After democratizing the money power of the nation with tally sticks, King
power.
Henry then began
Money
decentralizing political power as well.
King Henry granted something called the Charter of Liberties, voluntarily stating what his powers were.
1100 AD.
Before that, kings had assumed unlimited power. This was followed in 1215 by the Magna Carta, the basis of the U.S. Constitution. A new class began to develop, the merchant class. Trade routes grew, and new towns sprang up along them. This mercantile class needed stability, and so they supported the king, his strong central government, and the rule of law. In 1265, the first parliamentary elections were...
That's another thing that Mike Rivero brought up that I agree with, is that there were gods out there somewhere that ruled over you, and you had to listen to the supreme priest. And then there were royalty kings out there who said, you gotta listen to me. I tell you if you live or die. And then there were the money junkies that came after the banksters. And this is all a transition of what they have done from back then, 2,000 years up to now. And you got to pay attention to history. I'm telling you, if you do not pay attention to history, you are lost in it. You're lost to be repeating it over and over and over again. He who does not learn from history will repeat it. I can't say who said that. It slips my mind at the time. Let's go on here anyways.
Held. Government by the people in England was born. As money poured into the middle class, the small business persons of the day, feudalism began to break down, and the English Renaissance was born. By the 1600s, serfdom in England was legally banned. Humanity, at least in England, was finally set free. Literature flourished.
But then came what they call the great, where you're a slave on your own land, serfdom. Well, serfdom's one thing, but when your land's not owned by you but by the king, well, that's what came next. And feudalism came into the kingdom of England, and you was a feudalist. You lived on the king's land. Therefore, I was like when I said the kings used to say everything was it because they owned all the land, and you were just servants on their land. This took me back. I'm sorry. Let's go on with this.
Now there was money to support artistic endeavors
Shakespeare.
like the plays of William Shakespeare. The nation was at ease due to a debt-free money. Although life in the Middle Ages was certainly not easy by today's standards.
Debt-free. Repeat that over and over. Debt-free money is what we need. We need nobody issuing the money to put a debt on it. What they do in banks when you borrow money. You don't have to pay interest. There's no interest on money. Society is free and becomes free. And we are a free people when that happens. Continue.
Once tally sticks were killed and the nation became indebted to bankers, it got worse. After 600 years, the money changers were finally able to begin to reassert their control over English money when they convinced the Parliament to create the Bank of England. This put the banking community back in control of manipulating the quantity of English money. Now England had to borrow its money supply from banks and pay interest on it instead of the government simply issuing its own money without such debt.
So in England we learned that simple sticks of wood broke the monopoly of gold money. This debt-free money lasted for 7 centuries and allowed a small island nation to rule the waves and freedom to root deeply in the new middle class.
With the goldsmiths back in control, England was now financing its wars with this bank loan money.
Just 75 years later, England's war debts consumed 75% of its budget. 3/4 of British taxes were spent just on paying the interest on its war bonds.
Banksters again. Banksters. Remember that. I keep repeating it. They're gangsters who have taken over the banking industry, and they're no longer bankers, but banksters. They are gangsters living amongst us, robbing you of your wealth, your family's wealth, your life, and turning you into a servitude slave to work for them while they make billions and live in ultimate paradise. The few are living in paradise over the many. Does that sound right? You're not in that. You're not there. You're not part of that. This is what this is all about.
As a result, England needed to squeeze more and more money from all her colonies to pay the interest on this new growing debt. America was no exception. Pre-revolutionary America was still relatively poor. There was a severe shortage of precious metal coins to trade for goods. So the early colonists were increasingly forced to experiment with printing their own homegrown paper money. This paper money was called colonial scrip.
Colonial scrip is exactly what it was. It was a bond between the government and the people that they would give them this money debt-free, and they would be able to do as they wish with it to trade with. And it was just as good as going to a guy who gave you milk, to a guy who gave you eggs or furniture. Let's go on. What do you not understand yet with what's going on? This really makes me mad when I see the history of this. And you think I was off Saturday? You hadn't seen nothing. I may go off even more tonight because of this craziness of going back over the money junkies and their bankster system. It just makes me mad.
Scrip was a dangerous concept for bankers. It broke the colonies free of the privately owned central bank system where money had to be created by banks and then loaned to governments. As Franklin put it,
In the colonies, we issue our own money. It is called colonial scrip. We control its purchasing power, and we have no interest to pay to no one.
Exactly.
In 1764, the British Parliament passed the Currency Act. Again, it ordered all Americans to pay their taxes in gold or silver coin. To Ben Franklin, this return to a gold money system was the basic cause for the American Revolution.
The colonies would gladly have borne the little tax on tea and other matters had it not been that England took away from the colonies their money, which created unemployment and dissatisfaction.
Americans were mad and did everything they could to get around Britain's gold money system. In 1765, Parliament passed the Stamp Act, requiring that certain printed materials had to have a stamp placed on them, indicating that a tax had been paid and paid in gold.
To the King of England. You know, George Bush III. George III. Same thing. And you had to pay him this tax on gold. Do you not understand what yet is going on here? This goes on. I'm only going to do about 50 minutes, and I'm going to have to do a part 2, or actually a part 3. This is part 2 to what I started a couple of years ago when this first came out and showed you The Secret of Oz. And this is just not right. It's wrong. I mean, just look at, you had to pay a tax to make sure every document, every document had a stamp on it. No matter what it was, it had to have a stamp on it from the king. And if it didn't have that, they'd arrest you with the British colony. I'll just make this short. They turned around, and then we got pissed and decided to do the Tea Party, because the Tea Party was the last thing that happened before the Revolutionary War, was the tax on tea that had to be paid, which made tea almost, a third more expensive than it was, and people couldn't afford that under gold and silver to the king. So we went in a revolution and threw their tea off their boats dressed as Indians and said, there, we are Americans. And that's what they claimed themselves to be. And every child born after that is an American. I have to say this. When I fill out an application and they give me the option of Native American, I check that one. Even though I'm only an eighth of American Indian, I will check that one, because I was born here in America. And everyone born here in America should check that same box if they offer it on an application. Native American. Because you were born here, weren't you? You didn't come here over a boat last year. Anyways, I'll finish this up with the last couple of minutes and see where I can end it.
This is what drove America to open revolt.
Do you understand what that means? Without gold, you could literally buy or sell nothing. Why? Because the British had successfully forced the colonies to pay for everything using only a precious commodity, gold. This is the very definition of the word plutocracy.
Plutocracy. The rule by the rich.
People that deal with gold and silver only have never spent 1 minute of actually trying to figure out how it worked in history, how it would work in real life, and the only way they can support their gold theories is they just treat it as religion and said, we don't have to understand it, we just know that that's God's money and it'll work, and that's not true.
By the outbreak of the Revolution in April 1775, the colonies started printing a new form of paper money to finance the war.
It was called continental currency because, unlike colonial scrip, it was the first issued by the new central government.
Continentals were great at first, but then the British started counterfeiting it massively, sending it to America literally by the bale. By the end of the war, the currency was virtually worthless. As George Washington lamented, a wagon load of money will scarcely purchase a wagon load of provisions. Earlier, colonial scrip had worked because just enough was issued to facilitate trade and counterfeiting was minimal. In other words, the quantity was controlled by the government that issued it. Gold bugs today try to claim that because paper money didn't work during the Revolutionary War, it shouldn't be used today. But keep in mind, it doesn't matter what backs your money. All that matters is who controls its quantity. Will it be your elected officials, or will it be some unelectable banker? Colonial paper money before the Revolution had worked so well that the Bank of England had Parliament outlawed and forced America to use only gold money, gold which they controlled.